In the quaint town of Ravenswood, nestled amidst dense forests and winding rivers, there existed a series of disturbing occurrences that locals whispered about in hushed tones. These were tales of close encounters with the unknown, instances that sent shivers down the spine of even the most stoic residents. These tales weren't just isolated incidents. They formed a tapestry of terror that wove through the fabric of Ravenswood's history, leaving a lingering sense of dread in its wake. One such tale spoke of the abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, a decrepit structure with crumbling walls and broken windows. It was said to be haunted by the spirits of its former inhabitants, a family whose tragic demise was shrouded in mystery. Many dared not venture near, for those who did reported hearing whispers carried on the wind and seeing shadowy figures flit past broken doorways. But it wasn't just the mansion that harbored dark secrets. Deep within the forest, there lay a forgotten cemetery, its headstones weathered and moss-covered. Legend had it that those buried there were victims of a witch's curse, doomed to roam the earth as vengeful spirits. Brave souls who dared to venture into the cemetery at night spoke of eerie lights flickering among the tombstones and feeling an icy presence breathing down their necks. Yet perhaps the most chilling tale of all was that of the old bridge that spanned the river on the outskirts of town. It was said that beneath its rusted beams dwelled a creature straight from the depths of nightmares, a monstrous being with glowing eyes and razor-sharp claws. Those unfortunate enough to cross the bridge after dark risked being dragged into the murky depths below, never to be seen again. Among the townsfolk, these stories were passed down from generation to generation, serving as cautionary tales to heed the warnings of the unknown. But for a group of curious teenagers, these tales were nothing more than fodder for their boredom. Determined to prove their bravery, they set out one moonlit night to explore the darkest corners of Ravenswood. Their first stop was the abandoned mansion, where they crept through the overgrown gardens and slipped inside through a broken window. The air was thick with dust and decay as they made their way through the labyrinthine halls, their footsteps echoing off the crumbling walls. But as they delved deeper into the heart of the mansion, they began to hear strange whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. Unease gnawed at their insides as they pressed on, their flashlights casting long shadows that danced along the faded wallpaper. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence, sending the teenagers scrambling for the exit. But as they reached the front door, they found it sealed shut, as if by some unseen force. Panic set in as they frantically searched for another way out, but every door and window was barred against them. As they huddled together in terror, the whispers grew louder, filling the air with a cacophony of disembodied voices. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes that seemed to reach out for them. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the whispers ceased, leaving behind an oppressive silence that seemed to suffocate them. With trembling hands, they managed to pry open a window and scramble to freedom, fleeing into the night with their hearts pounding in their chests. But their ordeal was far from over, for the next leg of their journey would take them to the forgotten cemetery deep within the forest. As they trudged through the dense undergrowth, the air grew thick with an otherworldly chill that seemed to seep into their bones. The moon cast an eerie glow upon the moss-covered headstones, illuminating the twisted shapes of the trees that loomed overhead. Despite their fear, they pressed on, determined to conquer whatever horrors awaited them. But as they reached the heart of the cemetery, they were greeted by a sight that chilled them to the core. Strange lights flickered among the tombstones, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with a life of their own. And then, from the darkness emerged figures clad in tattered robes, their eyes burning with a malevolent glow. Paralyzed with fear, the teenagers could only watch as the figures closed in around them, their whispers echoing like the wails of the damned. And then, with a sudden burst of movement, the figures lunged forward, their hands reaching out to drag the teenagers into the depths of the earth below. But before they could lay their hands upon their prey, a deafening roar split the night, shaking the ground beneath their feet. From the shadows emerged a creature straight from the depths of nightmares, a towering behemoth with glowing eyes and razor-sharp claws. With a mighty swipe of its claws, it set the figures scattering, their screams echoing through the night as they fled into the darkness. With their tormentors vanquished, the teenagers stumbled to their feet and fled from the cemetery, their minds reeling from the horrors they had witnessed. But as they reached the old bridge that spanned the river, they found their path blocked once more, this time by the creature that dwelled beneath its rusted beams. With no other options left, they made a desperate leap across the chasm, their hearts pounding in their chests as they landed on the opposite bank. As they collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath, they knew that they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. From that day forth, the teenagers never spoke of their harrowing ordeal, for they knew that some horrors were better left buried in the depths of the unknown. But the tales of their close encounters would live on in the whispers of Ravenswood, serving as a reminder that in the darkness, the true terrors of the world lurked just beyond the edge of our